Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Shari Franke. She is the daughter of Ruby Franke, and Ruby ran a really big family YouTube channel called 8 Passengers. I think their last video that they posted on that channel was back in December and have since stopped uploading videos. Shari Franke, the daughter, has since moved out of the home, I think for a couple years now. She's gone off to college and started kind of living life on her own, and she has since separated herself from her parents. Ruby Franke has since started to focus on the group that their family joined a few years back called ConneXions, which was coined as a self-help group. It was supposed to help people in their relationships and just become more self-aware and just better in their relationships. And this is all based on, I guess, principles and all this other kind of language. Ruby is also focused on a Facebook group called Moms of Truth with Jody and Ruby. They really focus on moms and parenting, and she has become somewhat of a life coach, so to speak. To give you an idea of exactly who Ruby Franke is, I'm going to play a few clips of their YouTube channel where on that channel she exploited her children, she punished them publicly, and held her parenting style to a very high level, and said, well, this is the right way to do things. So let me play those clips for you quickly.
I'm only going to say it one more time, and then you're going to lose the privilege to eat dinner.
I just got a text message from Eve's teacher, and she said that Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school? This happens quite often when you're raising children, because I know that her teacher is uncomfortable with her being hungry and not having a lunch, and it would ease her discomfort if I came to the school with a lunch. But I responded and just said Eve is responsible for making her lunches in the morning, and she actually told me she did pack a lunch. So the natural outcome is she's just going to need to be hungry, and hopefully nobody gives her food and nobody steps in and gives her a lunch.
My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
You've been sleeping on a beanbag.
I've been sleeping on a beanbag since October, and they gave my room back like 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'll give you the reason why I lost my bedroom. I think so. I think this is the reason. At least this is the reason that's been in my head. It's pretty funny, but now that I look back, I mean, it's pretty depressing.
No, we never told our viewers.
That I woke Russell up at 2 in the morning and told him that we're going to Disneyland and he has to pack. And he got up and made his bed all neatly and then packed all his clothes in a suitcase. And then he walked out the door and I'm like, Russell, he was like, what? And he's all happy. Has his sunglasses on.
Do you think it's funny? Because
and then I walk out.
If you think it's funny, then that was 7 months ago. Maybe you need longer without a bedroom.
It was not funny.
Russell got the big bedroom and Chad got the smaller bedroom. And Russell's bigger bedroom also had a bathroom. But what you guys didn't know was Chad didn't get any room. He didn't get anything. He was sleeping on the floor in the family room. If you cut one more thing in my house, I'm going to take the scissors, look at me, and I'm going to cut its head off.
Grandma will be so mad.
So what are you gonna do?
Are you gonna cut anything else? No.
You promise? Look at Mama.
I can't imagine growing up in a household like that. Shari Franke, the daughter, has, like I said, since moved out, and she is opening up a little more and more. In this podcast, she talks more about her family joining this group ConneXions that Ruby is still associated with, and how it really distorted her self-image. Essentially, it ruined her. Again, this family is very religious. They're Mormon. These groups are also connected to religion. Without talking too much about religion, my opinion on it with children is that I don't think that we should be ever shoving religion down a child's throat, forcing them to be any certain way, and definitely not instilling fear in our children by using religion. I just find that so totally wrong, and that's what happened with these children growing up. And this is what these people do, is they use religion to shape and mold their children to be a certain way of what they think is perfect, and that is just so totally wrong. I think we need to let kids be kids. That's just like the bottom line, and not force all these ideas upon them, because it really messes them up. These are too big of ideas for them to take in. I think the best thing that we can do as parents is to teach our children right from wrong and just teach them how to be good people. It's as simple as that. That's just my opinion, and that's just where I stand as a parent. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get on into this podcast. This podcast is also a pretty religious podcast, but it's interesting just to draw the connections between what Shari is talking about and her overall upbringing. Because yeah, she's talking more about the group ConneXions in this podcast, but I feel like it is directly linked to her whole entire upbringing. The podcast is called Into the Light. They talk a lot about the gospel and all of that stuff. So I kind of just went through and picked out what pieces were important to draw those connections between Shari's upbringing, and she talks a little bit about being in a family that vlogs, and then she talks about how this group ConneXions sort of ruined her family and pushed these ideas and pushed their family to ultimately a breaking point, especially for her. So yeah, let's get on into it.
So what about you personally growing up? Were you like, how was your relationship with the gospel, with God? Like, did you have a close relationship? Was it kind of just like, oh, my parents do this, my family does this? Like, how was that?
Yeah,
dynamic?
so I think I've always loved the gospel. When I was like 8, for some reason, I got like really obsessed with Joseph Smith and just read every book on him that I could, because I was just like fascinated by it. But I also realized, like thinking back on it now, when I was like 5 or 6, I was scared to go to hell. Like, I don't know where that fear came from, but I was like, I am so scared I'm going to be damned. And I think that like carried into my teenage years. So I was always worried about like wanting God to be happy with me. Yeah.
I know you just said you don't know where that came from, but if you had to take a guess, where do you think that fear came from?
Oh, man.
From her parents. Period.
I think maybe part of it was just like my perfectionist mentality as like an oldest child.
You felt like there was a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, and I probably put up most of that on myself. But I always just wanted to be like perfect in every way, and that applied spiritually as well.
So she didn't, obviously she doesn't want to throw her parents under the bus, but with any child that is brought up like this, that fear initially comes from what their parents have taught them and their upbringing, and that's the truth behind it, even though she didn't say that.
Okay.
How was it growing up being on camera all the time? Because it's a lot, right?
Yeah, so I started being on camera. I should remember the exact age. I was like 12, maybe 13-ish.
Yeah.
I thought it was strange at first, honestly. I was like, this is weird. Like, we take a camera with us everywhere. And
Oh, was that like legit?
yeah, like we took a camera when we'd go on vacations. We'd film going to the store. We'd just like always kind of film everything. But over the years, like I got used to it more. It's like, yeah, this is like our job. Like, this is how we pay for vacations. This is how we get to do fun stuff. Like, you don't love it every day, but you do it because it's work.
He said it was work. And that's what it is for these poor kids. It's like having a job. If it weren't for them, the bills wouldn't be paid for most of these influencers. And that's heavy on a child.
Did that ever get hard? Like being in the limelight all the time?
Yeah, it got hard, especially
growing up.
Yeah, growing up. I mean, junior high phase, just I don't think was great for anybody.
Yeah. Oh no, I would not want
terrible.
my life on camera.
Yeah. And then I feel like as I got older, people got like meaner in the comments. They would say things like, "Oh, she's just a Molly Mormon. Like, she's just gonna grow up, become a baby making machine." Like,
wow. Oh my gosh.
Just because she's a member of the church. And so there was a lot of attack on
At
religion.
13.
Yeah. So that like there was a lot of attack on religion. People made fun of me because like I took school seriously, and they were like, she needs a life, and which like I agree, I did need a life besides school, but
yeah, but it was not helpful. You had like bully, like people have like the typical bully and like the person making fun
but
of
it
you
was
at
like
school.
strangers
who are
internet.
grown adults.
Yeah.
And that's the sad reality of these family vlogging channels and, you know, sharing everything with complete strangers, including your kids, you receive these comments and you don't know who's really watching. And sometimes these comments can be from, you know, just people being stupid, but then sometimes really dangerous people could be viewing you and your family and you don't even know it. And that's what's really scary and sad.
How did that affect you as a young kid?
I found myself, like, I would tell myself, it doesn't matter what they say. Like, I know how I feel about myself. And I think I believed that for a while.
Yeah.
But I always would find myself just, like, checking comments on Instagram, on YouTube, just to see what people had said about me.
That is just so sad. And she goes on to say it was probably unhealthy, which obviously it is. You're a young girl and you're finding yourself checking comments on the internet to see what people are saying about you, whether that be good or bad. That's not good for anybody's mental health or well-being.
So on the Into the Light podcast, as you know, we talk a lot about trials and things that people have overcome. So you've had your fair share of trials in your life. When did all that start and how has it affected you?
Yeah, so when I was in 10th grade, so I was like 15, my family joined a group.
We can assume she's talking about
like a mental
ConneXions.
health, kind of like a self-help group, basically. Because we wanted to, you know, grow closer as a family. We wanted each of us individually to become more, like, self-sufficient and
growth-oriented.
like growth-oriented. And so we started in this group, and like it was great at first. Like we were learning like a new, like learning lingo for stuff, and we were able to communicate in ways that we understood each other. And then, you know, when we interact with other people and we'd use the same language, like they were very confused. They were like, I don't understand what you're saying. And so in a sense, I feel like that brought us closer as a family because we knew what the other person, how they thought. We knew like how we could communicate with each other. And then as like the years progressed, this group became more extreme.
It sounds like it became more, it sounds like it was a cult like thing to begin with, but it sounds like it got more culty. And I feel like anytime you mix religion in with like self-help, like this is the way you should be, it probably never turns out well.
And they began to equate like their curriculum and their teachings kind of with the gospel in a sense.
So at first it wasn't with the gospel.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I never remembered that. Maybe they said it and I just forgot it.
Yeah.
But
When do you feel like, what was the thing that made you become more aware that they were equating it?
I think when they started like talking about God while they were also talking about their same curriculum and stuff.
Self-help, growth.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so I was like, oh, well, the gospel and this go together. Like if I live this curriculum well, then I'll be a better church member, and vice versa. So
Interesting.
yeah.
And I think we should throw a disclaimer out there that life coaching is a very controversial space right now in the mental health field.
Yes.
Because
there's low accountability.
There's very low accountability. You don't need a license to become, like there's no state certification for life coaching. And so you have to be very, very, very careful and research very deeply if you turn to life
For
coaching.
example, her mom, Ruby, went from influencer to now this life coach. Interesting that they brought that up.
So how did you feel about it? Like,
Yeah, so I remember going into it and one of the people had said to me, like, I don't think you have a lot of like empathy for other people and a lot of compassion for other people.
like towards you individually?
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, like I'm going to work on it. And so I would say my prayers at night and be like, Heavenly Father, like, why don't I have empathy? Like, please help me to like have it. And I mean, obviously everyone could have more empathy, I think, but I don't think I was like deprived of
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Like cold-hearted.
Yeah.
So you look at Shari, you
yeah.
don't think she's cold-hearted.
No. So I
Unempathetic is the first word that comes to mind. I'm just kidding. It's like the last thing.
oh man. So I look back at like a lot of the things that I prayed for at that age, and I like feel bad for myself that I was like so concerned with like, help me be clean, help me be empathetic, like I don't know what to do. And then I feel like I would work on it, and then I would go and talk with these people, and they'd say, you're still not getting it. And I would just like lose my mind over like, what else am I supposed to do? Like,
What was the benchmark for them? Like, what was the
Yeah,
standard?
that's hard.
yeah, I don't know. So like every week we would keep track of like how many times you used black and white thinking, how many times you like denigrated yourself, and so it was like a very, like I was always focused on the negative things that I was doing.
So she just said she was always focused on the negative. And if you always focus on the negative, you certainly will become a negative person. And I don't know how that would be any sort of self-help or help anybody with growth, just always focusing on the negative. It's always good to have just like positive reinforcement and not focus on the negative. Sounds like to me they brainwashed her.
So like I said, I joined it when I was in 10th grade. I got like more strongly involved throughout high school. So I graduated like very much on board with all of it. And then I came to college, and I mean, high school was like a bubble within a bubble within a bubble. And then
Yeah.
I broke out of one of those bubbles, but I came to BYU. Still in some bubbles, but less. So I started to, like, interacting with roommates and people that I hadn't met. I was very judgmental. I was like, wow, she's wearing that. Like, she's going to hell. Wow, she's wearing that. God's so mad at her. Or so, like, I was still very, like, judgmental about people like that. And I would take religion classes, and they would talk about, you know, God is so gracious and kind, and I'd say, well, they've got it wrong. And so I was just very like critical about the world. And then I think like some things within my family were happening that I started to question, like, I don't know if this is okay. Like, I don't know if God would actually support this. Like, is this really the gospel? And so for a long time, for like 7 months of my freshman year in college, I was just debating. I was like, I don't know what to believe. Like, I believe the gospel is true, but I don't know exactly what that gospel is.
Yeah.
Just imagine a self-help group that just makes people become judgmental. That's great, right? Anyway, she goes off to college, and she kind of has some time away from her family and this group, and then she sees how other people do things, and she learns about other people's ideas, and so it's like an eye-opening experience for her.
Like, I didn't know where to draw the line between
Life coach. And
like
gospel.
life coaching and the gospel. At that point, I was very convinced, like, this is too extreme. I need to do something, change something, but I wasn't sure how. Because, you know, I want to honor my family. We're supposed to honor our parents. And I felt that to disagree with them was sinful, and that God would be mad at me too if I did that.
But how do you think you kind of, I guess, mentally worked through that?
I gave no indication that I disagreed with what was going on, because I wanted to still be like included in things. And so again, for those like whole 7 months I was doubting, whenever I'd go home, you know, it was like, oh, we use this language, we talk about things like this. And then I noticed, like, when I would leave my family, like, I would just feel like spiritually drained. Like, I just wouldn't feel great.
Yeah.
I would like overhear conversations and just like find myself internally like, this isn't right. Like, this isn't okay. And so it got to the point where I was like, I can't keep pretending like everything's fine.
So overall, this is so interesting to me, because being raised up until she was able to move out, she said herself like in this bubble. And when she finally was able to kind of burst that bubble and get out of that life situation, she saw new things. And then whenever she would go back home and experience what her family was still doing and whatever was happening in that group, she felt very unsettled, and it just didn't feel right to her. And so just being able to change her ways and change how she thought, she basically had to do this all on her own and kind of relearn things and learn for herself. And she had to stop worrying about, you know, what mom and dad would think, even though that was still in the back of her mind because that's how she was raised. She didn't want to disrespect them, like she said. And she didn't want to sin by going against their beliefs. But at the same time, as an individual, that's important. You have to learn for yourself, and you have to be able to form your own opinions and beliefs. It's not always what mommy and daddy say. It's just so interesting to me to hear her speak on it. And I'm wondering if like more will come out. It's very interesting just to kind of follow. And then she also in the podcast went on to say she started to get therapy, and that therapist as an outsider was able to help her validate her own feelings and help her realize that she is allowed to love herself for who she is. And I think this idea of being perfect took her over for so long that she was just, like she said, she was living in fear. And that is a sad situation. And that's why, like at the beginning, I said I would never, ever try to hold my children to a certain standard. Children are going to make mistakes. They're going to be children at the end of the day. And it's our job just to teach them right from wrong and not scare them into certain beliefs. Definitely not have a camera in their face every single day and punish them in front of millions of people and then have them join these groups for our own satisfaction. Another thing too is her mom Ruby is still going strong in these groups and actually still using stories from what her children have been through in these groups as like examples.
So the example I want to share, I thought was loving. However, the fruits of what I was providing for my children, the love I was offering them, was inviting them into destruction. My children were spoiled rotten. So I did what a true loving mom would do. And I said, no more. I'm not going to do this anymore. Who says no to free packages, gifts, money, vacations? Someone who's truly loving.
And their YouTube channel, it hasn't been active, but I'm wondering if that is going to become active and maybe turn into a channel for that mom group. I don't know. It's just wild and crazy to me, and it's just frustrating. But overall, I wanted to do this video because I found it very interesting, and I hope that you guys will share your thoughts and opinions on all of this in the comments below. I'm interested to see what you all have to say and what you think. So please do that. Please leave a comment. Leave a like if you like this video, and please subscribe if you like content like this and you want to see more from me, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.